I feel like the power of the students. I feel like that's one of the biggest things we don't realize we have. We come here, we pay tuition, we kind of just like go about our business, and we like feel like there's so much that needs to be changed, but how can it be changed? And I feel like often sometimes before this as a student, I felt like there was nothing that could be done. So it was like, oh, like we're just going through the motions, we pay because we have to pay, but it's just kind of like everything is going to be because it is, and there's nothing we can do. And so for me, I feel like students can learn that like through this, there is a lot of power and a lot of, like things that can be done because they are students. There's a lot of power to be had and a lot of money in the UC system that is waiting for us to grab, because if we don't take it, it's going to be used for something else, whether that's building new engineering buildings that we already have enough of, or whether that is, doing things that we really don't want to be done for ourselves. But when we demand and say, I know that you have this lump sum of money and I want it to be used to this, it's our money. So why not demand for things that we want to see done on campus? And I think this is a beautiful display of what can be done through student activism. So.
Hi, I'm Jeffrey Stewart, Chair of the Department of Black Studies here at UCSB, and I'm here to introduce you to the North Hall display. The North Hall display is a result of student activism on campus here at UCSB. In 2012, the Black Student Union brought a series of demands to Chancellor Henry Yang, and one of them was to create a display in North Hall to the events of October 14, 1968, when 12 black students took over the Computer Center in North Hall. That action in 1968 led to the creation of the Department of Black Studies, the Center for Black Studies, and eventually the Chicana and Chicano Studies departments, Asian American Studies, and also the Feminist Studies departments. A broad range of change resulted from that, especially the insertion of information about the black experience into courses on sociology, history, literature, political science, really throughout the whole curriculum. And it can be said that after that takeover in 1968, the curriculum at UCSB forever changed. The images you see here are the ones that were discovered by the students doing research during the summer of 2013, and the design here was one that was created in collaboration with Mehmet Dog, who is the designer at the University Art Museum. Students, faculty, staff worked together to come up with a design that would make visible the presence and influence and impact that black students at that time had on the campus. And we're very proud to say that the visualization of the black experience is captured here on the walls of this North Hall.
We did expect the worst. Fortunately for us, it did not happen because of the work that was done, I think, particularly by Booker Banks, who his antics and his courageous oratory from the second floor of North Hall caused the crowd to create a blanket of cover for us that basically they made the statement, well, if you go in the building on them, you're going to have to come through us. And so the crowd protected us once they saw what we were doing, once they knew what we were about, and Booker's instantaneous relationship that he cultivated with them from the second floor of North Hall caused us to be in solidarity. It was a majestic and monumental moment for us.
Here we see two of the students who are speaking out, addressing the crowd. Often, right after the takeover occurred, a large number of students amassed and asked what was going on. That gave the black students an opportunity to speak and discuss from the second floor of North Hall. One of the interesting things about it is that after a short time, most of the students, essentially white, black, brown, supported the action, although afterwards from Governor Reagan and others, there was considerable criticism of the takeover itself.
I feel like the only time, for the most part, there was really a lot of smooth sailing with all of the demands that we had. But the one I feel like we had the biggest issue with were our endowed chair and the in the North Hall display. And so for the endowed chair, there was so many emails we had sent back and forth with the chancellor, figuring out how the money was going to be raised. Of course, we know it's a big chunk of money, but the university is a money-making machine, so we know the money is there. And so for us, we had to really set up a press conference, and then we had a lot of different students sending emails to the chancellor saying we're in support, putting our demands and stuff inside of the Daily Nexus, and really finding outside support to come in and put on pressure, letting the professor know, or letting the chancellor know that we had outside people who were backing us. So it wasn't just the students at UCSB that knew about it, it was professors and students from all over the world. There were students that we had met and connected with from different countries. There were students we had met and connected with from different UCs, from different universities, and really having them and the community support on the things that we wanted, and them like showing up and coming through. So we never had to actually have like a full action where people had to come and demonstrate, but there was a lot of things done like via social media, and I feel like that's one of our biggest powerful tools with activism this day. It can be a hindrance, but at the same time, it could be a benefit. Because a lot of people are on social media, you have more of those retweets, more of those emails sent out, a variety and a bigger spread of people coming together and being like, this is what we want. Even if they can't physically be there, they can be there with you via internet. Yeah.
Right here you see one of the more interesting photographs that the students unearthed from the archives. It was a photograph in La Cumbra, the yearbook in 1969, looking back at 68. Here's a shot of North Hall from the south, looking northward, and you can see that in addition to the milling students, the students who occupy the building at top had put down a banner renaming North Hall Malcolm X Hall. Part of the idea here was that Malcolm X, who had been killed in 1965, was a hero to students in 1968 and of course today as well, because of his unabashed support for black people, for the dignity and history of black civilizations, and students wanted that kind of consciousness, that kind of sense of history reflected in the curriculum students would get here at UCSB. During the research for this exhibition that we conducted in the summer of 2013, we had to confront the gendered nature of the representation of the takeover in many of the media that recorded it. For example, in La Cumbra, the yearbook, and in the El Gaucho newspaper, there were very few photographs of women, even though black women were some of the most important enablers of the takeover. When we invited some of the participants back from 1968 to talk about their role, one of the most outstanding was Cynthia George, and she was willing to give us a photograph of her speaking out at the time and making a contribution. That way we felt we had a more balanced representation of what was going on in 1968 that we could be found just in the university archives.
The chancellor at that time was Cheadle. I'm not sure there was a bigger name after him. But anyway, I remember going up a building, right? This is before the occupation, with black students, with demands about faculty, with demands about classes. Those things occurred before the occupation. Chancellor Cheadle had us at his house, met us and so forth. The occupation was built on at least a year of a foundation of building coalitions with other organizations, of educating the other students on campus of the reality of our difficulty here, and the fact that students had something to say about their education was something that non-black students understood we were talking about. I don't think that the occupiers went into the building in the absence of a lot of work that was done prior to that time. And the reason I think we didn't end up with students who had felonies and misdemeanors and arrests and so forth is that there was enough work that had been done prior to that day for some of those white students to stand in solidarity with us. You can't build that at the moment of the action, but that was built up over a period of time from 1967 until the occupation. African American students, black students knew upon whom they could rely and that we needed to stick together. And those things were in place and had been worked on by people prior to the occupation.
These are two of the more powerful photographs that are represented in the North Hall display. Picture here essentially of people on the second floor speaking down to the crowd that had gathered, explaining the demands, explaining the kinds of abuses that many of the black students felt they experienced on campus, demanding that the knowledge of the black experience be reflected in the curriculum here. We see the kind of black voice being represented here. Next over here, though, I think is a very important photograph that was from La Cumbre, sort of the tension that existed on campus and off between black students and police. After the takeover, there was a raid in IV that occurred at one of the houses where some of the participants in the event were living. Afterwards, they felt that this was a form of retaliation. The tension between students and black students in particular and the police was very high during the 60s. And of course, as we know from events that have been going on in 2015, the tension between police and black people continues even today. This is one of the more interesting photographs that students unearthed from the archives, a photograph that explicates the dialogic nature of the confrontation, the way in which the takeover led to a lot of conversations that went on at the time and afterwards between black and white students about issues of concern for the black students on campus. Here we see a reporter from El Gaucho speaking with one of the students inside, basically trying to create a sense of understanding about the events that led to the takeover. The issue here that is explicated in this particular photograph is from the United Front. The United Front was a student organization that was formed after the takeover that take on and make visible a number of issues of concern for students at this time, the anti-Vietnam movement, and also the support for the United Farm Workers strike against grapes led by Cesar Chavez in 1968. One of the more poignant moments in the takeover was when white students basically sent up food for the black students to eat during the takeover, and black students threw down the grapes stating, "We do not eat grapes," an expression of solidarity with the Mexican-American struggle against the grape pickers at that time.
This North Hall exhibit exists because of a unique partnership between the BSU at UC Santa Barbara and the Department of Black Studies, several members of which dialogued with students over the last 3 years. It resulted from an unprecedented collaboration among several units of the university, especially the Art, Design, and Architecture Museum, to make this visualization of black student agency possible. We have a ways to go to complete the installation, but what we have achieved already is a new model for how to make the black transformation of the modern university apparent and available to all who visit this campus, UC Santa Barbara.